Every year, hundreds of millions of people flock to these kingdoms of escapism, trusting that the intricate machinery of delight has been engineered to perfection. We strap ourselves into steel contraptions, willingly surrendering our bodies to G-forces and dizzying heights, all for the price of a ticket and a temporary suspension of disbelief. But what happens when the engineering fails? When human error, corporate negligence, or a single moment of breathtaking stupidity turns a day of fun into a final, horrifying ordeal? Tonight we are examining the most terrifying and preventable deaths ever recorded in theme parks. These are the stories of what happens when the illusion of safety shatters, and the screams become all too real. We begin with 3 stories of couples whose dream dates turned into their worst nightmares. Case 1. The One Who Spoke Up. Our first story takes us to Six Flags Over Texas in Arlington on a hot summer day, July 19, 2013. 52-year-old Rosie Esparza was visiting the park with her family, ready to take on the new Texas giant. Reopened in 2011 after a major renovation, this hybrid coaster, with its steel track on a wooden frame, was marketed as bigger, smoother, and more intense than ever. It was the park's crown jewel. As Rosie settled into her seat, alone in her row, a flicker of unease crept in. The restraint, a single hydraulic lap bar, clicked into place, but it didn't feel right. Witnesses in the car with her later reported hearing her voice her concern to the ride operator. She told them her harness didn't feel secure, that it seemed to have only clicked once. The operator, allegedly, assured her it was fine. As long as it clicked, she was safe. The train was dispatched. As the train hurtled through its course, Rosie's initial fear became a terrifying reality. During the ride's signature airtime hills, where riders are lifted from their seats, she felt herself rising dangerously high. Then came the final, sharp, banked turn and a steep drop. The single lap bar, the one she had questioned, was no match for the forces at play. Rosie Esparza was ejected from her seat. She was thrown approximately 75 feet, her body landing on a metal roof of the honky-tonk saloon below. She died from the impact. In the immediate aftermath, a firestorm of questions erupted. How could this happen? The investigation quickly focused on the restraint system. Had it malfunctioned? Was it a design flaw? Or was it operator error? Six Flags and the ride's German manufacturer, Gerstlauer, pointed fingers at each other. The Esparza family filed wrongful death lawsuits against both companies. The investigation revealed a complex and troubling picture. There was no single, catastrophic failure. Instead, it was a combination of factors: the design of the restraint, the geometry of the seat, and the lack of a secondary safety measure like a seatbelt. It was a system that had a very small margin for error, especially for riders of certain body shapes and sizes. Ultimately, the new Texas giant was modified. The restraints were redesigned and seatbelts were added. A test seat was placed at the ride's entrance, a grim reminder for future guests to check if they fit safely before queuing. Rosie Esparza's death was a chilling lesson in what happens when a guest's intuition is ignored. She raised the red flag. She voiced her fear. But the system, both human and mechanical, failed her. She died because she was right. Case 2. The crash they survived. 2 years later, on June 2, 2015, another young couple's theme park date would end in a life-altering disaster. 17-year-old Leah Washington and 18-year-old Joe Pugh were at Alton Towers in Staffordshire, England, excited to ride the Smiler, the world's first 14-looping roller coaster. The ride had a troubled history, with multiple technical issues and closures since its opening. But on this day, it was running, and the queues were long. Unbeknownst to the riders, a problem was developing. A test carriage, sent out empty, had stalled in a low, concealed section of the track known as the Batwing. The ride's block system, a safety feature designed to prevent collisions by keeping trains a safe distance apart, registered the stalled carriage and halted the ride. But under pressure to keep the ride moving and the guests happy, a series of critical errors occurred. Believing the block was empty and confused by the system's warnings, operators manually overrode the safety protocol. A loaded train, with Leah and Joe in the front row, was dispatched. Traveling at high speed, the loaded train slammed into the stationary test carriage. The impact was catastrophic, compared in the investigation to a 90-mile-per-hour car crash. The front of the train was crushed, the metal bars of the restraints folding and trapping the rider's legs. For hours, Leah, Joe, and the other passengers in the front row were trapped in the mangled wreckage, suspended in the air, bleeding and in agony, as emergency services fought to cut them free. Leah Washington's injuries were the most severe. Her left leg was so catastrophically crushed that it had to be amputated above the knee. Joe Pugh suffered 2 shattered kneecaps and severe hand injuries. While no one died, the Smiler crash became a national horror story. The park's owner, Merlin Entertainments, was fined a record £5 million for what the health and safety executive called a catastrophic failure. The investigation revealed a complete lack of understanding of the ride's safety systems by the staff on duty. They were overriding warnings without knowing what they were overriding. Leah and Joe's story, however, did not end there. They remained together, their shared trauma forging an unbreakable bond. Years later, their wedding was covered by the media, a story of love and resilience in the face of unimaginable horror. Leah became an advocate for disability visibility, a public figure not by choice, but by circumstance. Their story serves as a stark reminder that sometimes the most terrifying outcome isn't death, but living with the consequences of someone else's failure. Case 3. The Family Day Out. Our third story of a couple caught in a theme park nightmare takes us to Dreamworld in Gold Coast, Australia, on October 25, 2016. It was a family day out for Kate Goodchild, her brother Luke Dorset, and Luke's partner, Ruzba Ruzi Aragi. Along with another park guest, Cindy Lowe, and 2 children, they boarded the Thunder River Rapids ride, a supposedly gentle, family-friendly attraction. But the ride, a staple of the park for decades, had a dark history of malfunctions and near misses. Its safety procedures were outdated, its staff inadequately trained, and its automatic safety systems had been bypassed or were unreliable. On this day, that history would culminate in a horrific, fatal accident. An empty raft became stranded on the conveyor belt at the end of the ride. Instead of shutting down the ride to clear it, staff continued to send more rafts through. The raft carrying the 2 families approached the conveyor. Instead of docking safely, the raft collided with the empty one. The impact caused the loaded raft to be lifted vertically, then flipped backwards into the conveyor mechanism. The scene turned into a horrific tableau of industrial violence. 2 of the adults, Kate's brother Luke and his partner Ruzi, were thrown into the conveyor and crushed by the moving machinery. The other 2 adults, Kate and Cindy, were trapped underwater by the raft and the ride's structure. They drowned. Miraculously, the 2 children, Kate's daughter and Cindy's son, were thrown clear of the mechanism and survived. What followed was a masterclass in corporate malfeasance. The coronial inquest revealed a staggering level of systemic failure. The ride was a ticking time bomb. Dreamworld's parent company, Ardent Leisure, was heavily criticized for its handling of the crisis, prioritizing its investors over the grieving families in a disastrous press conference. The park permanently decommissioned and demolished the ride, but the damage was done. Dreamworld's reputation was shattered, and the tragedy sent shockwaves through the entire Australian theme park industry, leading to sweeping regulatory changes. This wasn't a high-speed thrill ride. It was a gentle river rapids ride. But corporate cost-cutting, a culture of complacency, and a complete disregard for safety turned a family day out into a brutal, mechanical slaughter. For Luke and Ruzi, their final moments were spent together, on a ride that should have been nothing more than a pleasant diversion. 3 couples, 3 dates, 3 horrifyingly different outcomes. A woman who spoke up and was ignored, a young couple who survived but were forever changed, and a family torn apart by a machine that should have been safe. These stories show us that the danger in theme parks isn't always where you expect it. But what happens when the danger is not a malfunction, but a deliberate choice? When the very design of a ride and the people who operate it are pushed beyond the limits of safety? From this point on, our stories shift from couples to individuals, but the theme of preventable tragedy only intensifies. When we return, a 14-year-old boy, a record-breaking drop tower, and a fatal decision made before he ever left the ground. Case 4. The boy who was too big. We now move to Orlando, Florida, the theme park capital of the world. On March 24, 2022, 14-year-old Tyre Sampson, a promising young football player visiting from Missouri, boarded the Orlando Freefall at Icon Park. At 430 feet, it was the world's tallest freestanding drop tower, a ride built for the ultimate thrill. But Tyre was a big kid, well over the ride's official weight limit of 130 kilograms. And yet, the operators allowed him to ride. This was not a simple oversight. It was a deliberate circumvention of safety. A later investigation revealed that the safety sensors on Tyre's seat, and at least one other, had been manually adjusted. This fix allowed the ride's computer to register the harness as safely locked, triggering the green light for dispatch, even when there was a dangerously large gap between the harness and Tyre's body. Video taken by witnesses shows Tyre's harness looking noticeably higher and looser than those of the other riders. But the green light was on, and the ride began its ascent. As the gondola reached the top and tilted forward for the drop, the physics of the situation were already sealed. Shortly after the ride was released into its free fall, Tyre Sampson slipped through the gap in his harness. He fell more than 100 meters, impacting the ground in front of horrified onlookers. He was pronounced dead at the scene. The public outrage was immediate and intense, fueled by videos of the incident that quickly went viral. This was not an accident in the traditional sense. It was a killing. The forensic engineering report confirmed that the deliberate repositioning of the safety sensors was the direct cause of the tragedy. Had the sensors been in their original factory configuration, the ride would have never started. In the wake of Tyre's death, the Orlando Freefall was permanently decommissioned and dismantled. The incident triggered a fierce debate about ride safety standards, operator training, and the dangers of outsourcing ride operations to third-party companies. Tyre Sampson died because a series of adults chose to ignore the rules, manipulate the safety systems, and prioritize profit over a child's life. Case 5. The man who wanted his phone. Our next case takes us to Cedar Point in Sandusky, Ohio, on August 13, 2015. 45-year-old James Young had just finished a ride on Raptor, a high-speed inverted roller coaster. During the ride, he lost his phone and wallet. Instead of reporting the loss to park staff, Young made a fatal decision. He climbed a fence and entered the restricted, employee-only area directly beneath the coaster's track, determined to retrieve his belongings himself. This area is fenced off for a reason. The Raptor, with its top speed of 57 miles per hour, thunders through this zone with minimal clearance from the ground. It is an active, dangerous kill zone. As Young searched for his lost items, another train full of passengers came roaring through an overhead element. He was struck by the train, either by the structure itself or by a rider's dangling leg. He was killed instantly. Cedar Point closed the ride for the remainder of the day, but an inspection quickly confirmed that there was no mechanical malfunction. The cause of death was entirely due to Young's unauthorized entry into a clearly marked dangerous area. This is a textbook Darwin Award scenario, a death caused by a single, incomprehensibly poor decision. It stands in stark contrast to our other cases. Here, the park's safety systems and infrastructure worked as intended. The fences were there, the signs were clear, but they were no match for one man's determination to get his phone back. It's a tragic and brutal lesson in the finality of a momentary lapse in judgment. Case 6. The Ones Who Slipped Through. Beyond the headline-grabbing disasters, there exists a long, grim tale of smaller, less reported incidents. These are the single-rider ejections, the quiet tragedies that often get lost in the noise. The pattern is hauntingly familiar. A rider, often alone, boards a coaster or a spinning ride. A lap bar or a harness doesn't secure them properly. They are ejected, falling from a height of 6 to 10 meters. They rarely survive. Investigations into these deaths are often inconclusive. Was it a mechanical failure, a poor fit due to the rider's body size, or was it a simple tragic case of an operator failing to perform an adequate check? The parks respond predictably. They retrofit the rides with secondary restraints, like seat belts. They implement stricter height and weight rules. They add more explicit signage about proper rider posture. But the incidents continue to happen, a slow, steady drip of preventable deaths. These individual stories, when viewed together, paint a disturbing picture. They show that the spectacular failures like the Smiler or the New Texas Giant are not anomalies. They are the extreme end of a spectrum of negligence and procedural sloppiness that exists across the industry, in parks big and small, all over the world. Each of these deaths is a story of a system that failed, a checklist that wasn't followed, a warning that was missed. They are the ghosts in the machine of manufactured fun, a reminder that every single restraint check is a matter of life and death. Case 7. The Wedding That Never Was, Priyanka Sharma. Our final story takes us to Delhi, India, in early April of 2025. 24-year-old Priyanka Sharma was a sales manager, a young woman with a bright future. She was engaged to be married to her fiancé, Nikhil. But they had postponed the wedding, scheduled for just months away, so she could work, save money, and help support her family. On a Thursday afternoon, the couple decided to take a break from their responsibilities and enjoy a day at the Fun and Food, Water and Amusement Park. After spending the afternoon in the water park, they moved to the dry amusement rides. At around 6:15 p.m., they boarded a swing-like roller coaster. It was an older ride, and as it climbed to its highest point, the unthinkable happened. A supporting stand, a critical piece of the ride's structure, suddenly broke. The swing carrying Priyanka was thrown from the ride. She fell approximately 20 feet, suffering catastrophic injuries. Her fiancé, Nikhil, rushed her to a local hospital, but she was declared dead on arrival. This was not a case of a rider breaking the rules or a complex sensor being tampered with. This was a simple, brutal case of catastrophic structural failure. The very bones of the ride gave way. The investigation, conducted under India's new, modernized criminal code, the Bharatiya Nyaya Sanhita, focused on negligence and culpable homicide. The park's management issued no public statement in the immediate aftermath, and the affected section of the park was simply shut down. Priyanka's story is a tragedy of cruel irony. A responsible young woman, working hard and delaying her own happiness for the sake of her family, killed by a park that failed to maintain the most basic standards of structural integrity. Her death is a stark reminder that in the global theme park industry, the gap between a first-world megapark and a smaller regional park can be the gap between life and death. For Priyanka and Nikhil, their wedding was just months away. Now, it would never happen. From a faulty lap bar in Texas to a tampered sensor in Florida, from a mangled coaster in England to a rusted support in India, the stories we've seen tonight have one thing in common. They were all preventable. These were not unavoidable acts of God. They were the direct result of human choices. Choices made by corporations, by operators, and sometimes by the victims themselves. Theme parks sell us a fantasy of safe, controlled danger. But the reality is that these are complex, powerful machines, and the systems that are supposed to protect us are only as strong as their weakest link. The next time you hear the screams echoing from a roller coaster, remember these stories. Remember Rosie Esparza, Tyre Sampson, and Priyanka Sharma. And remember that the ultimate thrill is not worth the ultimate price. Thank you for watching Final Moments.